Hello and welcome to this next video. Here we go. The brand new Condor 3 is finally here. So let's have a look how to set a task in our new simulator. So after starting Condor 3 you will be welcome with this screen. So after just pressing on free flight in a very similar way as we used to do in Condor 2, that's going to open the flight planner. So I've got a new flight started over here. Now the first thing worth noticing is that this flight planner window can now be full screen. So by going to the right top corner, you can maximize the window and now it will fill the full screen, which means the map is much bigger and it should be much easier to set a task in this nice and big window. Another thing that I'm sure you've immediately noticed, that we not only see the map but also the airspace. So Condor 3 has airspace, which developers have tried to make sure that it's the same as in the real world. Some airspace is not activated by default, so if you start a new task, as you can see, some airspace is grayed out, which means that it's not active. So wherever you put the mouse pointer, in the left top corner you will see which airspace is in that particular place. In many cases there's more than one, because obviously we could have different airspace at different altitudes, and if it's grayed in the left top corner, that means that the airspace is not active. We can activate all airspace if we want, so just right click on the map, go to airspace and then enable. We can either enable our airspace one by one on, all airspace at the particular location, at the location of the cursor, or we can enable all airspace. So now I've enabled all airspace, so wherever I put my pointer now, the airspace in the left top corner is never gray. All airspace has now been activated. Well, in the real world, it's pretty impossible that all of this airspace would be activated at the same time. So if we want to have a little bit more realistic airspace, we can go once again, right click, airspace, disable, and we can disable all restricted and dangerous airspace. So that's what we've got by default after starting a new task. Once again, right click, airspace. Here you can for example add a particular, if I just right click, let's say here, and go airspace, as you can see we've got some checkboxes we can tick, and to select which airspace we want to be active at that particular location. If you want to have a flight, something like we used to have in Condor 2 with no airspace whatsoever, you can always right click, go to airspace, disable, click disable all. Now all airspace is deactivated, so that brings Condor, that makes Condor 3 airspace the same, which is non-existent as it was in Condor 2. So maybe let's go back. I will now just enable all, and now I will disable airspace, disable the restricted and dangerous ones. Okay, so let's have it in that state. Okay, so let's start building a task. So first, as in a very similar way to Condor 2, we just click on the airfield to start to set the takeoff point, and then we can set a start point. And by dragging our mouse across the screen, we can set, maybe I will just set a 10 point over here, and I will just go back to Bobbits and set finish there. Okay, now I'm going to, by right clicking on the turn point, I'm going to adjust its properties. I'm doing this relatively quickly because that's very similar to Condor 2. There's not much difference there. So I'll just set it to, normally I wouldn't set it to 3000 meters radius, but to make it more visible on the map, I will just leave it at 3000. Again, we've got very similar options to Condor 2. We can set the minimum, maximum altitudes, the directions, and so forth. So I'll just leave it like this. And now if I right click on this turn point and click on insert, I will get another identical turn point, which now I can drag across the map and place in a position where I want it to be. Now, next, the very, very important and interesting thing is that, well, we can move a start to maybe a location which is not very close to any airfields, okay? Maybe I could have a look, start over here. Normally in Condor 2, that will be a bit annoying because people will have to fly all this distance to get to that start point. But now in Condor 3, if you go to the NOTAM tab, and if you set the start type as air start, and you go back to your task, now you can actually move the air start point. That means the flight will start from that particular point, which is not above the airfield. This gives well, way more possibilities in terms of starting tasks in some interesting places which are far away from the airfield. So I hope that this will make some competition tasks more interesting. You might have already noticed that there is, we now have in Condor 3, we now have this tick box over here, which after ticking this box, we can now set and assign area tasks. So now if we change the properties and let's say increase the radius on of that turn point, notice that in the bottom right corner we've got the minimum, maximal, and through center distances displayed there, which should allow you as a task setter to predict a little bit about what would be a reasonable time for this particular assigned area task, which then the assigned area task time can be set over here on the right side. You can set the number of hours and minutes. Okay, so let me first accept that number of hours. So for example, this could be a 2 hours assigned area task, let's say. So that's new. We can now create assigned area tasks directly in Condor. There is no need to edit any files. We can just create it straight away in Condor. I'm going to switch off this assign area task and maybe change the property of this point of the standpoint to make it back to 3000 meters as it was before. Right, so we've set the air start position, the start location, and our turn points. Now the next thing is, well, let's have a look at the weather. So at this stage, when I'm kind of ready with my task, I've selected some turn points. Then I would go to weather, and this is very similar to what we've had in Condor 2. So I'll just select by dragging in this field over here. I would create a wind, set the direction and the wind strength. That's very similar to Condor 2. I don't think there is anything different there. But now if we click on thermals, now we've got a couple of things which are different. Well, first, now we can have different levels of bugs during the flight. This parameter will decide how quickly your wings as you fly will pick up bugs, and of course, as they pick up bugs, the performance of the glider decreases. So that's where this can be set. Another very interesting thing is that, well, of course, by by changing the temperatures, and by dragging the inversion layer, we can set the cloud base and the size of the clouds. All those things will also affect the strength of the thermals. Now, if after going all the way to the maximal cloud size, as you can see below this inversion, we've got this little parameter which says OD, and that there's a percentage. That's the overdevelopment percentage. So if we set this to 100%, that now means that all those clouds will, to be honest, I'm not 100% sure if that means all, but I think, well, we will have a lot of clouds who will then overdevelop to form a big cumulonimbus style clouds, which then can produce rain and storms. So if we, let's say, set overdevelopment to a certain level, because this is a base layer, I don't want storms everywhere, so I will probably just leave it like this. Of course, the other parameters have are pretty much similar to Condor 2. So after setting my base weather layer, I'm going to go back to the planner, to the task, and now, a pretty cool and quite amazing new feature in Condor 3, we can actually customize the weather in different regions of the map. So to do so, we can just right click on the map. So maybe I'll just insert one more turn point. So let's go insert turn point. Let's put the turn point somewhere, I don't know, somewhere there. And let's say we want to make this task more challenging by putting some blue thermals on this leg between 10.2 and 10.3. Well, in order to do so, you can just right click on the map, go to new weather zone, and now we can just draw a weather zone in a very similar way we used to draw penalty zones in Condor 2. Now, if I right click, the shape will be closed. So right click, close shape. We can right click on this weather zone, go to its properties. I will just call it blue. You can choose the direction in which the zone can be stationary, so it could be just sitting here, or you can choose the direction in which it will move. So I will set it to 30 degrees, let's say, and you can select the speed, how fast the weather zone is moving. You can also set the width of the border. So this is a transition zone between the base layer and that particular weather zone. So all the parameters will gradually change from the base layer to this particular layer here. So let's say I'll set it at 4, and now I can go to assign weather, and as you can see, now I've got my blue weather zone selected. If you want to choose adjust another zone, you can just click on this drop down menu and select which one you want to adjust. So let's say we want to adjust the blue one, and we just want to make sure that there will be no indications of thermals. The thermals are still going to be there. I haven't changed any parameters, but now they should be blue thermals. So that's it. Let's go back to tasks. So we've got this weather zone. You can actually check how this weather zone will move by pressing the animate button. So by pressing animate button, I can see how this weather zone will move. Of course, below animate button, we've got time. This is Condor time. So if the start of the flight is at 12 o'clock and you've got 15 minutes join time and then maybe another 15 minutes before the race starts, well, all this needs to be taken into account when you are setting the initial position of the weather zone to make sure that it reaches a particular region at the time that you want it to reach that particular region. So we could also have I don't know, we could also have a little storm that maybe would force people to go around, or maybe people would need to wait until the storm passes. So maybe I'll just create another new weather zone, and I will just draw like something like that, and maybe put it over here. I will call it now properties. I will go call it storm. And I'll go to assign weather, and let's increase inversion. We could, for example, do things like set turbulence to be severe, and so on. Of course, you can spend as much time as you want to adjust all these parameters for that particular zone. So now if I just go back to the task, now I don't think that we've made this zone move, so let's go to properties again. Yes, let's say that this zone is just going north at 13 kilometers per hour. So maybe people will have to wait a little bit for the storm to pass before they can actually start the task. And again, we can observe how these zones are going to move. One interesting thing to point out is that if you create a weather zone, so new weather zone, and if your weather zone touches this, is in this gray area over here, something interesting will happen. So let's say I will just call this weather zone no activity. No activity, and let's say that this weather zone is going to move just east, and is going to move at that particular speed, let's say 10 kilometers per hour. Assign weather. We could, for example, set that there's blue thermals and actual activity is none, so there will be no thermals whatsoever. Maybe we want it to be just a ridge lift. Okay, so we could maybe increase the wind to be quite significant in that zone. If I now click on animate weather, notice that this weather zone, instead of just moving, it's going to grow and enter the area where the task is happening. So you can simulate a front coming in and shutting down the thermals in a given area like this. So there we go. So that's how you can set some weather zones in your task. Now I think that is also worth mentioning one more thing. We could go to, let's mention the NOTAM tab. There's a couple of new settings in here. First is the wing loading. We can now limit the wing loading, and if the wing loading is limited, let's say to 50 kilograms per meter squared, and you go to your hangar, and let's say we will select a glider, let's say 50-meter glider, JS3 15 meters. Now if you just put too much water ballast, the wing loading becomes red, and now when you try to start the flight, you will just get a message that the flight cannot be started because your wing loading is too high. So the slide is now a little bit bigger for to make sure that it's a little bit easier to set the correct amount of water ballast. Now, if we go back to the NOTAM again, we can also set a maximal start speed now directly in Condor. So, for example, it could be 170 kilometers. The maximal here is 250, but if you want this start speed to be unlimited, you could simply bring the start speed penalty to 0, and now it doesn't really matter what the start speed maximum start speed is selected, there will be just no penalties for starting too fast. Another couple of sliders worth mentioning is that now we can also set the high start penalty. So it is possible to allow pilots to start the task even if they're above the maximum start height. If you want to keep it the way it was in Condor 2 and disallowed starting above the maximum start altitude, you need to drag the slider all the way to the right to not start it. That means that now it will not be possible to start above the maximum start altitude. Same thing with the low finish. If you drag it all the way to the right, that means that if somebody arrives to the finish line below the minimal below the minimal altitude, they will not be able to finish the task. But you can allow tasks to be finished with the penalty for arriving too low again, and that can be done with this slider. So we've got 3 new sliders in terms of the penalties: start speed, high start, and the low finish. We can also limit the wing loading directly in this NOTAM tab. The other options I think are the same as in Condor 2, so I'm not going to spend too much time talking about them. So I think that's pretty much all I wanted to cover. Well, of course, this start doesn't have a maximum start altitude, so maybe we can go to properties and set that to, let's say, 2000 meters. So now the maximum start altitude is going to be 2000 meters. By the way, if we are using an air start which is not at the airfield, then if somebody wants to restart the task, they would need to fly to the nearest airfield. So I think in this case it's this airfield down there southwest from our starting position. So it's not possible. In order to restart, a pilot will have to fly to the airfield, to the nearest airfield, and then when they land on the airfield, safely land and press the restart button, then they will be brought back to this air start position, and they will be able to, well, start the flight again from there. I guess that's all for today. The other options that I have not touched in this video are pretty much the same as they used to be in Condor 2. I think that this, especially the new weather zones, and you can add up to 7 custom weather zones, so plus the base one, that's 8 different weathers along the task. When 2 weather zones overlap, then the parameters is just the average of the 2. So that's how that's supposed to work. And with this new weather zones, I think it's going to be possible to create some really interesting tasks. And well, the sky is the limit. You can just use your imagination and well, become creative in terms of making some really interesting tasks, which, well, depending on what you want to achieve, can be either super fun or you can try to mimic the real world competitions and set the weather to be quite similar to what we've got in the real world. Please note that you could, for example, have 2 weather zones with completely opposite direction of the wind. When these 2 weather zones meet, there will be probably a convergence happening over there. We can also set, of course, in weather, we can also set streeting if we want to create some cloud streets. So yeah, it's going to be great fun. So thank you very much for watching. I think that's going to be it for today in this video. Well, I guess I'll see you around. See you flying in Condor. Bye bye.